Hello, everyone, and welcome. It looks like everyone is beginning to join. For those of you who are new here, my name is Hannah Jennings, and I am a community organizer at Tech in Motion. Over 10 years ago, Tech in Motion was founded by staffing and recruiting firm Motion Recruitment with the goal of bringing together the tech community to share ideas and inspire one another. And we've been doing exactly that ever since. We are thrilled to announce that the 9th annual Timmy Awards is now accepting nominations. For those of you who may be unfamiliar, the Timmy Awards recognize the best tech startups, managers, and employers for creating innovative products and fostering environments where tech professionals can thrive. With 8 unique categories, there are lots of opportunities to showcase your organization's culture and people. So check out a link in the chat to learn more. Now, speaking of innovators in our industry, I'm excited to bring you a conversation today with an inspiring panel of women who are breaking barriers and driving innovation in their tech landscape. Be sure to stay tuned until the very end of today's discussion for live Q&A with our panelists. You'll have the opportunity to join a breakout room and network with your panelists and peers and ask any follow-up questions you may have. We are recording the session, so if you have to hop off early for any reason, no worries, you will get a recording via email. Now, without further delay, I am pleased to introduce you to our host for today, Shayla Crudupt. Shayla is a technical program manager at Dell Technologies and an award-winning IT professional with over 10 years of experience specializing in global strategic initiatives and program management. Beyond her professional achievements, she has been awarded the opportunity to mentor peers, friends, clients, resulting in promotions, new jobs, and stronger relationships. We are honored to have Shayla hosting the conversation today. So Shayla, I will let you take it away from here.
So nonetheless, a little bit about me before I jump in. Hannah did a great job with the bio. It's always good to kind of hear some of the things that we've been able to accomplish. And before we even get started in today's conversation, my journey kind of started a few years ago where I had a great conversation, which is why I value conversations like this today. I had a mentor tell me I could have it all when I had a space in my mind where I really needed to focus on at that time being a mom and being married. And she told me those words that changed my entire life. It built on something I call self-assurance, self-brand, self-care, self-worth. My journey took me to self-worth, which is a whole nother story we'll talk about another day. But part of that self-worth not only led to my divorce, but led to me realizing the value of a powerful conversation. Now, my grandma calls these golden nuggets. Some of you may refer to them as gems. So as we jump into our conversation today, I'm going to ask that if you hear any of our speakers give you a gem, give you a golden nugget today, a word of advice, a word of encouragement, anything that just sparks something inside of you, that you drop it in the chat, because I guarantee you not only will it spark something inside of you when you share it, but it will spark something inside someone else as well. So I want us to be amongst some great fire conversation today. And without further ado, ladies, I would love to hear a little bit about your career path. How did you get into tech? How did you get into your discipline? And really share a little bit of your journey. Sashieka, we can start off with you.
Yeah. Hello, ladies and my gents maybe on the call. My name is Sashieka Seneviratne. I'm a director of sustainability for networks at Ericsson. So I've been with Ericsson for 18 years, and my career started out I'm Canadian. So hello to all the Canadians on the call. I saw some people from Canada. My journey started when I was 17 years old. I'm from a small island in Southeast Asia called Sri Lanka. So when I was 17, I packed my bags and moved to Canada on my own. And all I knew was I liked math, and I got into engineering. So I started off in civil engineering, but a year into it, didn't really enjoy it. So I was like, okay, I didn't like programming much. So I tried electrical engineering and I did a minor in business. So I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. But then I took one course in electromagnetics and I fell in love with that course. And then from then I followed my curiosity in that area. So right after my undergrad, I started working in power amplifier design, and I was very deliberate in how I planned my career. So for the first 10 years, I said, I want to achieve mastery. There's a rule saying you need 10,000 hours in something to be great at it. So I said, okay, next 10 years, I'm really going to focus on this area. So I picked power amplifier design. I did my master's while I was working as well. And I had very specific goals. I need to finish my grad school in the same area. I wanted to do some patents. So I have 2 patents, one trade secret in that area. Then after I achieved that mastery, I said, okay, the next 4 years, I'm going to focus on getting breadth, not depth. So then I focused on, okay, how do I lead an organization? How do I lead people? How do I lead a technical area that I'm not familiar with? So next 4 years, I focused on that. And then the next chapter, I said, okay, now I work with the company, different areas. How do I extend working with customers? So I look for opportunities to working with one customer. Then the current role I have, I get to work with multiple customers in the area of sustainability. So the way that I've placed my career, I've been very deliberate in the decisions I made. And if I wanted to look at something in 2 years, I would start looking at what skills I'm missing right now to get to that role in the next 2 to 3 years. So we'll get into a little bit more details in that. So that's how kind of my career journey started and progressed. So maybe I'll pass on to you, Amber.
Thank you so much. That was an amazing story. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I'm Amber Moriwu. I'm really passionate about supporting teams to achieve great things. Everything from releasing video games and software features to training and mentoring teams in agile practices, and also supporting leadership and effectively adopting and using OKRs to drive business goals. I've worked at large companies like Electronic Arts and LucasArts, and also a bunch of smaller San Francisco startups like mobile social gaming company DNA and entertainment companies like Fandom and Imager. I guess the question we should be answering is, how did I get to that? My first 10 years of my career, I have jobs that don't make it to LinkedIn, including managing a canned gourmet salmon telemarketing program in Anchorage, Alaska. Could talk about that over drinks, but I went back to school, to the Vancouver Film School eventually, and studied what was called new media or multimedia at the time. And my husband and I started our own company. We started a video production, CD-ROM design, I'm dating myself here, and web design company, and ran that for 5 years and had a fabulous time and got to the point where we wanted to go to the next level and realized that we had to hire people. We had contractors, but hiring people would really be the next level. We're ambitious people. We didn't want that level of commitment. And so we decided to go off and go into the regular corporate world and work for other people. And so I worked for a few different companies, and I jumped to Electronic Arts. Networking is always an amazing thing. And I hate to call it networking. I think making making friends, learning about people, being curious about people is a better way to think about things. When I was at Electronic Arts, there was a senior leader who I liked a lot who was leaving, and at his going away party, I'm like, hey, Matt, you're a fabulous person. I'd love to keep in touch. He said, well, why don't you ping me and my wife and we'll all go out for dinner. He also knew my husband. So we went out for dinner, and I was in Vancouver, Canada at the time. A year later, he said, Amber, I'm down in San Francisco working at LucasArts. Do you want to come work with us? I was like, oh my God, probably, yeah. So keeping in contact people, knowing people is, a huge key to progression. As I said, networking is a phrase that's bandied about, but I like to say developing relationships is really the key. Like everybody, I'm super interested in AI, both the positives and negatives, how I can speed up my workflow, and also the negatives, what guardrails we're going to put in place to prevent biases and scams. And fun fact, I actually used ChatGPT to generate kind of the outline of what I was going to share with you this morning or this afternoon, depending upon what time zone you're in. And I want to share a little quote I have about paying it forward. We should be lifting each other up and cheering each other on, not trying to outshine or one-up each other. The sky would be awfully dark with only one star. From Stacey Martin. I'm super excited to share my insights and learn from this amazing group of women today. Thank you so much for having me here. And over to Monica.
Thanks so much, Amber. That was really beautiful. Hi, everybody. I am Monica, and I'm originally from Nigeria. I got into tech by studying computer science, and after a few years as an engineer, I decided I wanted to be a product manager, and so I made a switch. And I've spent the last several years as a product manager, as a product leader, working in big companies. Like I started earlier in my career at Meta and Google, but also like Amber, I was very curious about smaller startups. So I have a lot of experience working at startups or advising startups. It's something that gives me a lot of energy. I'm very happy to talk about, some of those experiences across the spectrum. I'm currently in New York. I have 2 little girls, they're toddlers, and a lovely partner. And what else about me? I'm really passionate, like obsessed with building things that actually improve people's lives or businesses. That's where I get my excitement from. And I'd say the thing that has helped me the most in my career is a curiosity and a courage to go on despite mistakes or failure. I would say that like that resilience and that curiosity has really played a big part in my career success. And I love to talk about that because many times when we look at LinkedIn, we don't see the resilience or the mistakes that got someone to where they are. And I do believe like talking about it and normalizing the struggle it takes to actually be excellent is very important. Lovely. That is all from me. And I'm very, very excited to participate in this.
Awesome. I love that. You guys are able to still hear me, right? Okay, perfect. I love that. Normalizing the struggle. Okay, I don't know about you, but I wrote that down as my first gem. Normalizing the struggle. Thank you, because a lot of times we don't know how to be authentic, or we feel like we have to fit in a norm that's outside of who we are, right? But the more we are empowered by our voice, the more we are empowered by our struggle, the more we actually are guarded and guided to our purpose. So thank you for sharing that, Monica. Sashieka, I loved everything that you said. Amber as well. You ladies, this is already starting off just with us, with you sharing with us about you and like who you are. Well, my next question really is going to ask about some of the balance. Like, what are some of the tips for really maintaining a balance between some of the things that, actually, you know what, before I go to that question, I'm gonna ask another question because it's based upon the conversation, right? You mentioned, I would say, what are the most important things that to know for someone wanting to actually get into tech, since that's the space we're all in? And we can take that for whoever wants to answer it first.
I can maybe I can take a stab at first and passing on to the ladies. So I think main thing is with tech, it's constantly changing. So you need to have the desire to learn all the time. And if you like something monotonic, that's not tech, right? It's constant changing, and being okay with being a learner. Sometimes with tech, you become so good at something, but then something new comes along. But you should be okay to be able to be curious, to be a learner, and constant learning and teaching and changing, I think, is a key part in tech, and being okay with not knowing and changing that.
I love that. What do you think, Sashieka, before I pass it on, what were some of the things that you did to establish yourself in the tech space, like just like within your role?
Yeah, so you know what? Every time I've changed the role, I've kind of made myself what we could call a 30, 60, 90-day plan. So the first 90 days is the most important 90 days in any role. So the first 30 days, what I do is I create what I call a relationship map. So I kind of map out, so who are my internal and external stakeholders, what are their challenges, what are their expectations of my role, and also knowing in the company, who are my go-to people, right? So because it's all about learning as well. And then the next 60 days, what I do is kind of build a governance structure, meaning that who do I need to meet on a constant basis, right? And what are my expectations of those meetings? And who do I need to meet on a constant basis to keep up with all the changes? And then in doing so, I also want to make sure that, you know, time is the most valuable asset that anyone has. So, you know, being cautious about the time that I ask and give people, it's valuable as well. And the 90 days is kind of say, okay, then I build a strategy on what am I going to deliver? What is the strategy to deliver that? So really focusing on the 30, 60, 90-day plan on each role. And then also one other key thing, what I do is in any role I take is being up to date on what's going on in the market. So when I switched to this role in sustainability, I didn't know much about sustainability. So I looked up what are all the newsletters, what are all the market reports that come out, and on a daily basis, I set time in my calendar in the morning to read what's going on in the market in that area. So those are kind of the key things I've built for each role change I've done.
I love that. Those are some great tips. Golden nuggets. Okay, make sure you guys are writing that down. Monica, I'm going to ask you the same question. What are some of the things that you did to establish yourself in your role and in your field?
Very similar to Sashieka. I do a lot. I'm just very curious. I do a lot of reading, but to get to the point where you feel comfortable learning, again, it goes back to preparing yourself mentally for the discomfort. I've worked with some of the smartest people that I could, imagine. And those were some of the most uncomfortable times, but it was also times when I grew a ton. So as a general principle, I strive to work with the very best people that I can work with. And many times, again, it's going to make you uncomfortable, but that's because you're learning. And one other thing I've noticed is sometimes when somebody is amazing, it can be intimidating. And, we're going to talk about imposter syndrome later. Fight the urge to turn away and to go hide. Instead, go towards those people, because you will learn and you will see what excellence looks like. You will see it close. But the other thing that I guarantee you'll see is that we're all human. And even the geniuses make mistakes, and even the geniuses don't know everything. And that in itself can give you courage to live out your best life, to push yourself, to say the answer you think is right. Because the more you put yourself in circles with excellence, the more you will, again, normalize our humanity and normalize the fact that nobody has all the answers. So the fastest way I've learned is I look around and I figure out who are the people I admire most. And I find like the very best people, no matter how senior they are. And I just get to put myself closer to them. Go listen to talks if they're like super, super far off. Message them and ask for coffee if you think you have a chance to do so. If they're a friend or if they're a colleague, it's back to what Amber said. I try to make a connection. And it doesn't mean that this person, I'm not trying to copy everything from this person, right? We're all individuals. So figure out what are the qualities, what are the skill sets that you're trying to learn. And once you identify that, figure out the people that are the best at it, and then go towards them and learn what they're doing. And you don't have to replicate it exactly as they do, but you will see what they're doing. And then you can figure out, okay, I'm a very empathetic person and also an introvert, so I can't do it this particular way, but maybe I can inject A, B, C. And that's how I've been going about in my career, remaining myself, but also learning from other people.
I love that. Fight the urge to turn away, and uncomfortability equals learning. I love that. Amber, anything that you want to add, or things that you might have done with establishing yourself in your field? I know your story is a unique one.
I mean, I think everybody's story is a unique one, so thank you. I think a plus one to what both of our other panelists have said. I would say in discomfort lies opportunity. If you're doing the same thing, then you're not achieving and you're not growing. So in discomfort lies opportunity. I remember several companies ago, I was in a particular role, and they said they were internally looking for somebody to become a director of a brand new group they were going to start up. And I looked, I was like, director sounds like a terrifyingly important title. But then I looked at what that person would do. I'm like, I think I could do those things, but director sounds like a terrifying title. So I reached out to one of the senior leaders and said, can I have a coffee with you and just talk about this? And she's like, Amber, she's like, I was really hoping you might put your hand up for this role. I'm like, really? And so that I ended up talking with them. I took on the role, and then I reached out to somebody else, actually the person I mentioned previously who suggested I should come to San Francisco. And I said to him, hey, I'm taking this new role, but I would love to have your guidance on how I can approach this and how I can be successful. And so he and I set up every second week, I would buy him dinner. So that was my price. I would pay for his dinner, which I was more than happy to do. And we would talk about different ideas and, examine the situation. He gave me some great nuggets and helpful things to kind of continue to move me forward. So, in discomfort lies opportunity. When you're feeling nervous about something, you should probably think about running towards it.
Absolutely. Do it scared, as I always say. I love that, Amber. Thank you so much. I was going to say, too, the three of you spoke on a common theme around connection. If it's planning how to connect, like Sashieka said, with the 30, 60, and 90-day plan, it's something that I value and totally believe in. It's setting up how to build that connection. Monica talked about when it's, who to actually go to find the smartest person in the room. That's something that I live by myself. Amber, you're leaning into the resources that you do have to understand where you can fill in those gaps so that you can build that comfort in the spirit of when you are feeling discomfort, right? I love that. I think about where we're at now. There is a lot of layoffs that are happening. How do you ladies navigate in those spaces from not even like layoffs, but even like experience gaps? And Amber, I'll start with you.
Yeah, and so Shayla and I talked earlier, and I've been laid off from my last two companies. There's no shame in layoff. It's what happens when you work in tech. It's a hallmark. I've been working for tech for a while. If you've being laid off. And I saw somebody just mentioned they were laid off last week. I'm sorry, but also think about this as an opportunity. It's take a week, take some time to feel bad for yourself, because you should. Like, it sucks. There's no question. My last layoff was the second week of the pandemic when San Francisco shut down, like middle of March. I came back from a trip to Australia where things were shutting down there. I'm Australian. I went to the last Sydney Opera House opening before they shut down, came back, second day back at work, I got laid off. It was the week that 10 million people in America applied for unemployment. And we're shut down, we can't network, and I'm like, holy cow, what do I do? So it sucks. It's a horrible feeling, but it can also be opportunity. I would say balance yourself. If you've been in a situation where you've been laid off, I mean, obviously set some time, set yourself working hours. So don't kind of like, okay, I'm going to sleep in till forever, and then I'll just look at LinkedIn a bit and so on. Think about this as a job, but this is not a full-time. It is a full-time, but not entirely full-time. You want to have some time to job search, but you also want to have time to refresh and take care of yourself. So you want to find a balance between those two things. So give yourselves a 4-hour block of, I'm going to spend an hour on looking for jobs. I'm going to spend an hour on updating my resume. I'm going to spend an hour on reaching out to people, kind of bucket out your time. I use Trello, and I happen to work at the company that creates Trello, but I didn't at the time, as a backlog of what I'm going to organize my time and so on. But then also schedule and say, here's some fun things I want to do for myself. I love going out and cycling in nature, or going for walks, or quilting, or whatever your passion is. Because once you get to those interviews, if you're so burnt out from searching for jobs, you're not going to come across as a refreshed, interesting, exciting person. You're going to come across as this person who's just been in front of a computer forever. And, oh my God. So I was fortunate enough that I ended up landing a job at Atlassian, where I'm still at, for a much better salary and better long-term job prospects. And so it was horrible at the time. And each time I've been laid off, I've ended up at somewhere that I've felt has been a positive step for me. And I'm very grateful for that. I really am. And Shayla, if I can touch on one other anecdote that I told you yesterday. 2 times ago when I was laid off, I was offered a job at a company where I just had a spidey sense. It was a terrible situation. When I asked them about vacation, and they said, well, our mission is so important that, you really wouldn't want to take more than a couple of days off, because the mission of the company is really important. And again, I've mentioned, I'm from Australia. That's a long way away. You can't take 2 days off to visit my home country. And I was just like, that just seems out there. He's like, well, we encourage people to take Sundays off. I'm like, I need the job, but I'm fortunate enough to have a partner who does have an income stream. And so he and I talked about my gut. Like, I just felt sick to my stomach. End up passing on that job. When they made me the job offer, they left a phone message with the offer. I didn't respond. 2 hours later, they phoned back and upped the offer. I didn't even try and counter offer, but they upped the offer themselves. I'm like, it just had so many alarm bells. I didn't take the job. 2 years later, that CEO was ousted from the company by his board. So also listen to your spidey sense. Sometimes if you're really desperate, make sure it still feels right. Make sure your gut is still telling you this is the right direction to run in.
I love that. And speaking of spidey sense, that was a great conversation we had yesterday. I wanted to flip it now on the other end. What if your spidey sense is telling you someone's going to find out I'm a fraud? And some of us know this. We know this. I think I have told this to kick rocks. I tell imposter syndrome to kick rocks as much as I can, because I know it doesn't exist. Sashieka, I know this is something that you are very, very passionate about speaking towards. So I would love to hear your thoughts around imposter syndrome, where it's shown up, how it's shown up, and what you do to combat it when it does come.
Oh, I can tell you it shows up every time I switch a new role, take a new opportunity, apply for a promotion or anything like that. I think that's common. And the way that I've battled that is in a few ways. One is really facing it, right? Monica, you touched upon that there is no other way to combat imposter syndrome other than really tackle it head on. Doing the things that makes you uncomfortable, like, despite the feeling of that you don't belong there, that, someone's going to find out I'm a fraud, you keep on going. And when you keep on going, at some point, it just goes away. And I was listening to this podcast from Mel Robbins. If you haven't heard her, I mean, she has fantastic content. And one of the things she said is imposter syndrome is a battle between who you are today and a version of your past self that keeps on showing up. So that really opened my eyes. So for me, every time I feel insecure about something, I feel like it's that 17-year-old self that's popping her head up again, who moved from Sri Lanka, who English wasn't the first language, and that she's the one who keeps on showing up when I feel imposter syndrome. So it's kind of, learning to talk to her and say, hey, a 40-year-old self can't speak English, right? So that level of conversation and just keep on going. And I think also another TED Talk, if you haven't seen that, talks about imposter syndrome, is Amy Cuddy's TED Talk. She's talking about power poses, so fake it till you make it. I think she was a Stanford professor who felt it even when she was in Stanford, that she didn't belong there. She said she kept on going despite the feelings, and one day it just went away. And she gives some tips on power poses as well, how you stand when you feel small. So those things help as well. So those are two tips I would say. Amy Cuddy's TED Talk and Mel Robbins' podcast on imposter syndrome, really good tips there.
I love that. Thank you. Monica, do you want to add anything to that, or either one of you ladies want to add anything?
No, I think those answers are great. The one very tactical tip that I try to encourage people to use is, if you're feeling that you don't understand something, or just put the yet. Like, I don't know how to do X yet. And that's part of the growth mindset, believing in yourself that you can get to where you want to get to. It's just a matter of continue, like facing, to Sashieka's point, facing that thing. And so try that out as a very, very tactical example to see how it works for you.
I love that. I was just listening to a podcast today. If you guys know who, is it John Shetty? He has one, and he was talking about that inner critic, which is a lot of times the imposter syndrome. And he was really talking about the growth mindset and being able to tell yourself, give yourself grace in this moment, and being able to write down the things that you have accomplished when you get in your head too much. Even if it's 3 things, like I accomplished washing the dishes today, or I accomplished whatever, because a lot of times as we're facing obstacles, we get so caught up in the obstacles that we're not looking at the accomplishments. And I think when we go down that path, that's when imposter syndrome can really get us, right? And I go back to what you ladies were saying around connections. Do you feel like when you've had those moments of imposter syndrome, your connections have added value to kind of remind you who you are, or have kind of coached you out of it? Like, do you feel like a lot of your connections have helped you in some of those obstacles that you have faced personally?
Absolutely. Nobody travels alone. That's what I've learned. It's just, that's nature. And so, in fact, one of the things that I've been seeing a lot of people talk about on LinkedIn is these very successful CEOs. How are they, women CEOs, how are they doing it? And a lot of times you'll hear that they get a lot of help. They get help with the house, they get help with all the other things. And I think in life, it really helps to have a community that provides support for you. Last night, I went to Stanford for business school, and Stanford has a circles program where across generations, we meet every month to just, talk about life and share our experiences. And I had that last night, and it's just so refreshing to talk to other people and to recognize the different struggles and victories, and to feel that you have people that have your back and you also have their backs. So I mean, what Amber said at the beginning about building connections, I think it's incredibly important. And as you talked about layoffs earlier, there are things we can do today to help layoffs or other setbacks feel a little better, and doing things like having a community of people so you don't feel alone and isolated or embarrassed, and you have people that feel like they have your back. It really makes a difference. And my tip is also, everyone doesn't have to be from your generation or have to look like you. It helps to have some variation in your community. I find it really refreshing when there are different types of people with different types of jobs and different ages. You just get a different perspective. So absolutely yes to building community.
I love that. That's amazing. And I know as you think about the community that we build and how we get through those times, or even just trying to get through that next obstacle, or more importantly, even just the space of advancement. I know we think about the term of a mentor, a coach, or even a sponsor. Sometimes they call them advocates or allies. Amber, this question's for you. How can men be an advocate or an ally for women in the workplace?
Yeah, no, I mean, we should be supported by everybody, in our surroundings. I've obviously mentioned one of my advocates has been a guy. Thank you, Matt, man. So men can, like, mentorship, obviously I've had the privilege of having that. Making sure when you're in a situation you feel like as a female you're being pushed down, talk with somebody in that group, in that meeting. If you're constantly being talked over, your ideas are being taken, those types of things, look around that group and identify a guy who might actually be a potential supporter. Talk to them outside of that group and say, hey, I'm just curious, have you ever noticed in this meeting when this happens, this always happens? Would you be okay with speaking up or supporting me next time? And like actively ask for their support. And they may be willing to give the support and they may just not have noticed. They really may not have. I mean, be careful about who you choose. I've chosen well and chosen unwell. I've done both. So it's not a 100% thing, but be okay with like quietly asking for help in particular situations, to ask somebody to actively support you in that type of situation. Ask them to speak up on your behalf, because sometimes like that shouldn't be needed, but sometimes that can be effective.
I love that. I'll get that same question to you, Sashieka. How can men be allies or advocates for women in the workplace?
Yeah, I think one of the main things, whether it's male or female, like if you have a seat at the table, you need to speak on behalf of women. And the reality is today, it's still majority of men who's in executive positions, right, compared to the number of women. So they're in a position, they have the opportunity to speak up for women behind closed doors, where all these decisions are made in companies, right? Say, should we put a quota of how many women leaders we need by a certain timeline? So those kind of fundamental systematic changes, I think that if you're a man, if you have a seat at the table, you can step up to speak. And to Amber's point there as well, I mean, there's a lot of unconscious bias that happens. Start tuning into those, right? And then being able to step up, noticing them and stepping up. I've seen in meetings, right, if there's a male co-worker and a female co-worker, they're working on a project and they're asked, hey, I don't know, Amber, explain your project. And Amber gives an update. And if you ask the male coworker, do you have anything to add? They'll go repeat the same thing that the female did. So in moments like that, give the spotlight to the female coworker who's actually done a great job explaining what the project was. So there's micro, unbiased, micro things that they can pay attention to and then speak up.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense. And as I think about just like my mentor circle, I take a step back and look at everybody that's in my mentor circle. Is my mentor circle diverse? That's something that Monica talked about earlier. I want to make up of different generations, of different races, of different cultures, of different backgrounds, whatever that may be. I think that's a great way to challenge. If you think about advocates and allies, they should be men, right? But think about in the greater scale, what level of generation are they at, like when it comes to men? So a lot of great nuggets you ladies are sharing. I love the bit on unconscious bias, because a lot of times people don't realize that they're being biased and you gotta sometimes let them know. I had a really tough conversation with a leader one time who I felt during a conversation with a peer, he would always overtalk me. And I just told him, like, I'm kind of noticing this. Is it just me? And he's like, oh my God, I had no idea. And from that moment, just me being able to have that conversation with him, he's advocated for me 1,000%. So sometimes it's okay to tap people on the shoulder and lead with the how. You tell them, hey, what you're doing is making me feel a certain way, even though we don't want to bring feelings into the conversation, but it's making me think this way. I want to just make sure, and it's okay to have feelings, of course, but I'm saying I want to make sure professionally I'm getting the support I need to be and feel like I'm a part of the team. So I think those are great tips that you ladies are all sharing around allyship and advocacy when it comes to the male counterparts in the workplace. And I want to switch it over a little bit, because I want to think about some of the actions and things that we can do when it comes to career advancement. I know, Monica, I have a question for you in regards to really what are some actionable steps or even new skills that those that are entering tech or those that are in the career space, what are some things that they can be doing to advance their own career?
So the thing that I learned, it took me longer than I'd like to admit, but the thing I learned, especially about promotions, is if you want a promotion, ask for it. Especially when you grow up in different cultures, there's some places where culturally, you just put your head down and do the work and you'll get awarded the rewards. My experience in the US is if you want a promotion, the first step is to talk to your manager and say, hey, this is what I'm going towards. How can you help me get there? Because your manager can then show you what it takes, can identify what they perceive as your gaps. And that's how you figure out what you need to do. But it's not just your manager. You should be telling your mentors. You should be going and looking at people who recently got promoted into the level that you're interested in and asking them, how did you get promoted? There is nothing embarrassing about having ambition and wanting to be promoted. We each should feel comfortable speaking about our promotions. And when you do that, it helps people around you understand what you want, and they're more likely to help you because they know where you're trying to go. I'll also tell you that from the other side of the table, as a senior manager, it is such a relief when I understand people's expectations. Like, oh, this person is trying to get promoted in 2 years. Here are all the things I can give them that might help them get there. This other person is trying to get promoted in 6 months. I'm going to give really, increase the amount of the feedback that I'm trying to get from them. I might give them bigger projects because I know, like, I want to test and make sure they're ready in the next 6 months. And there's some people that don't want to get promoted. And actually, I don't want to pressure those people. So from a manager standpoint, it's actually very valuable signal. Now, I'll be honest with you. Some managers don't take it well. Some managers will be defensive. Like, hey, I would love to get a promotion to the next level over the next X periods of time. Can you help me? And it's just like, hey, you're not ready for a promotion. Why do you think you could get promoted? And the thing I would say to that is, like, it's okay. If the person doesn't take it well, there are two things. One, sometimes people just need time. And when you come to them and ask for a promotion, they may feel, especially when they're not very experienced, they may feel that you're asking for something that they cannot give you right away, because promotions often involve, time and a bit of effort. And so people can get defensive. So give your manager as much time as possible so that they understand where you're trying to go and they feel like they're well equipped to help you get there. And even if they have a bad reaction in the moment, don't throw in the towel. It's okay. Just know I've had conversations that were like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize how sensitive this was. And then, like, the next week, my manager is like, I thought more about it. Here are all the different things we could do. So be okay with the convo not going super smoothly, but do make sure you say it. And the more you start to practice talking about what you want openly with your manager, the better it'll get over time. You'll just get better at gauging things and figuring out how to frame things. I often find that when you ask people, I'm trying to get here, can you help me? Like, what advice do you have? What gaps do you see? That tends to, like, bring down the defensiveness, and then people start to want to help.
I love that. I'm going to ask the same question of you, Amber, but first I want to share this quick tidbit because, Monica, you reminded me. When I meet with a lot of my mentees, I tell them you should have quarterly touch points with your leader. And you should ask questions like, where do I struggle? But more importantly, how do I show up, right? What does my brand say about me? What is one thing I should start and maybe stop doing? Just asking those questions so you can understand why the end of the year comes, how you're going to be up on your review. Like, there should be no surprises at the end of the year review because you've had these conversations, you've spoken up, you've claimed what it is you want, you're actively listening, you're getting feedback, you're being open. Like, I'm bringing everything that you just said, Monica, to like a full circle. But having those conversations on a quarterly basis, I found has best prepared me to advance in my career every single step. Amber, I'm going to just take that over to you, but in a different way. When it comes to identifying a mentor, and I'm going to combine this with how would you find a mentor, but more importantly, what is the best professional advice you've ever received from a mentor?
So how to find a mentor? First of all, don't go up to somebody and say, will you be my mentor? Because that's terrifying to them. Back to develop relationships. Find the people who you find inspiring. Find the people who are a step or 2 steps or 3 steps beyond. Find reasons to talk with them. Ask them questions. A couple of companies ago, somebody was at C level, who was a woman, was the only woman at C level. And I was like, she seems really interesting. I started talking with her a little bit. And it turned out there were things I had that she was interested in, she wanted to learn about as well, and things that, so it became a good vice versa. We end up setting up a once a month conversation, et cetera. But it started from small conversations and just checking in and saying hi, et cetera. Look for people both at your company, but also outside of your company. Go to look at Meetup. one of the good things from the pandemic, and whilst the pandemic was a horrendous thing and so many lives lost, a lot of great things came from it as well. A lot of meetups are online. So even if you're in a city or a place that doesn't have a tech community, you can go to online meetups that are tech communities from other areas like San Francisco, etc., which is where I'm at. So look for those places to make connections. Look at LinkedIn. Look at people who are posting interesting things. Comment on them. Build your profile and start making your own observations. If you're curious about AI, I posted something about AI. I was like, oh, I had to do this speech and I wanted to figure out the title. And so I asked AI for 3 titles and it was amazing. It didn't come up with the perfect title, but it gave me something to start from. I got so many comments on that. I'm like, that was like the simplest thing to put on LinkedIn. So you'd be surprised, little outreaches like that can get a lot of touch points. So look in many different places, start with small conversations, build from there. Don't jump, it's like dating. Don't say, hi, you look cute. Do you want to marry me? Build up to that relationship and make sure that it's a two-way street. The best advice that I've been given by a mentor. Let's see. It's a hard one. I don't know if I can think of one specific thing, but basically having mentors who believed in me and who wanted me to go to the next level. The faith that mentors were able to give me helped me. So I don't know it was particularly words. It was more the feedback and the faith that I got from that relationship that helped me be stronger and more confident. And we talked earlier about imposter syndrome. When I joined Atlassian, part of the onboarding, one of our founders has done a TED Talk. I guess there's a lot of TED Talks about and it's about imposter syndrome. And so one of the onboarding tasks is to listen to our founder talking about imposter syndrome and how he himself experienced it. And so it's been normalized at our company that imposter syndrome is a thing, that our founder has experienced it. Does that mean that doesn't still happen? Of course, it still happens, but at least it's something that's a language that we have at the company that we can talk about. One of my things I think about when I'm in imposter syndrome or like, should I do this or that? This sounds a bit silly, but I say, what would I do if I was a guy in this situation? What would I do if I was a man? And I shouldn't have to say that, but it's surprising what I answer. And what I answer is often something much bolder and more straightforward that I would do sitting in the shoes that I'm sitting right now. So that's another odd prompt that you can use for yourself.
There you go. Get yourself out of your own head. That's always good to do. Sashieka,
yeah,
I'll ask this. Exactly. Yeah. And Sashieka, I'll ask you the same question. What's the best professional advice you've ever received? And we're wrapping up in a minute, so don't mean to rush you. But
okay, so I'll give 2 nuggets that I carried me all the time. One is don't overestimate the people on pedestals. So going back to what Monica said, that we see someone amazing, but actually if you go back and look at where they started, they're no far away than where you are today. So don't overestimate the people on pedestals. Learn about their journey and you can get there. Second part is, especially for women, pick courage over perfectionism. We tend to go for things, even if it's a job application. If we don't have all the requirements, we don't apply because we think we're not there yet. So pick courage over perfectionism. So those are 2 nuggets that I carry with me all the time.
I love that. Anything you want to add to that, Monica? And I'll hand it back over to Hannah.
No, those were beautifully said. Actually, the thing that's coming to my mind is a mixture of what Amber said and what Sashieka just said. But the advice I've been giving that's around having courage and believing in myself, those are the ones that have been most impactful for me.
I love that. Believe in yourself. Don't overestimate the people on the pedestal. Pick courage over professionalism. This is great.
Perfectionism.
Perfectionism. There we go. All right. Thank you, ladies, so much. Hannah, I know we are right at that time, so I'll pass it back over to you. Enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, thank you all so much for sharing such incredible advice. I know there were a lot of questions in the chat, so we're going to open the networking circles for about the next 15 minutes, and you'll have the opportunity to sit down with our panelists and dive deeper into Q&A and network with your peers. So in a moment, you'll see the breakout rooms pop up on your screen. Feel free to hop into one or join a couple. Thank you again to our panelists for taking time out of their busy schedules and to everyone who attended. Enjoy connecting with our panelists.